United States government has made some changes to SBA financing. Are you being affected? Welcome to the Never Lose a Deal podcast. I am your host, Brown-Phillips, and today we are talking about some of the recent changes with SBA financing. Now, if you are new to this podcast, I want to let you know that this podcast is for real estate investors who are looking to expand and scale their real estate portfolio using creative financing. And that is what I normally talk about here on this podcast. And so I have did numerous podcast episodes on SBA financing. And when I look at the data and analytics, one thing that I notice is that there's a big interest in SBA financing. And I know I had said in the past I was going to do more videos on that topic, but I could not resist some of the changes that have recently gone on. They happened last week, and we have some current bubbling things that may end up happening soon as well. So let's get into it. So right now, as I shoot this podcast episode, there is a pending government shutdown possibly happening. Now, the last time I did a podcast on this topic, it was in the fall of 2025, and I talked about SBA financing and will it affect you as a business owner? And that has to do if you are a business owner who is in the process of getting financing. And so you can go back. If you're listening on any of the podcast streaming sites, you will find that podcast episode. If you're watching it on YouTube, I will put it in the show notes underneath this video. But currently, right now, we have a pending possible government shutdown. Now, back in the fall, when the shutdown happened, SBA financing ceased. The government said they were not, Small Business Administration said that they were not processing any loans. But depending on your lender, and I know the lenders that I work with, many of those lenders were still taking applications, getting things in line, because once the shutdown stopped, that of course loans would be processing. And so I think that shutdown happened, and it lasted for about a month, or yeah, it was like 4 weeks or whatever, 4 or 5 weeks. So with that being said, this is where we're at. It's 2026, pending government shutdown. Same thing may happen. If there is a shutdown, 9 times out of 10, SBA will cease financing, but that doesn't mean that business owners or real estate investors like you still cannot get financing. And it does depend on lender. I tell people all the time, SBA financing is not monolithic. A lot of people have you to believe that, especially here on the internet. They will make you think that there is only one way to get SBA financing, and what they do not know that there are different lenders. And so I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to give you two things to take into consideration if you are looking to get SBA financing. And so let's talk about what happened last week with some of the changes. Well, some of the changes that did occur, and it happened with FHA financing. Well, it has to do with the whole immigration thing that is going on here in the US. So permanent residents are no longer able to get financing. So that literally just leaves US residents and another category. But I'll be honest with you, with my clientele, I really just deal with United States residents. But permanent residents are the group of individuals, business owners, who unfortunately will not get the ability to get SBA financing if they are a business owner. You know what? My memory serves me right. Let me go back. U.S. residents who hold a green card do still have the ability to still get SBA financing. So a lot of things have a lot of changes happen It doesn't surprise me. We saw a lot of these changes with FHA financing back in the later part of 2025, as well as with Section 8. Want to make it a separate topic, but I'll touch on that. Right now with Section 8, the government is now um making, or should I say, telling many public housing authorities throughout the country that they must release the records of immigrants who are living in those facilities, who are getting those services, to release them out to the government. Now, this is no political show, but when financing, and I talk a lot about financing here on this show, does have, is impacted with, a lot of the government issues. So that's why a lot of times I may have to bring those things up. But let me now go into two things you have to consider, even with, if you're watching this podcast and you are a permanent resident, there are other options. That's why now more than ever, and that is why I created this show, why creative financing matters. Now more than ever, you need to have different ways to be able to finance your opportunities. Now, I will say this. There are always going to be other ways that individuals who are immigrants, who are not permanent residents, will be able to finance their business endeavors, their real estate endeavors. I mean, seller financing still exists. That is still a creative way for even the citizens who live here in the US can be able to continue on with the opportunity to be able to buy real estate or buy businesses. Seller finance is done in numerous ways. It's just not one way that it can be done. Like I say on the show all the time, there's 100 ways to skin a cat. So the whole idea of seller financing is for it to be a win-win for both of you, for it to be a win-win for the seller and for the buyer. The sad thing here on the internet, what I see is a lot of people, when they talk about the seller financing, it's always to be predatory, to find someone who is in a desperate situation, for you to be able to complete a deal. And what happens is it becomes a one-sided thing where it's a losing situation for a seller and it is a winning situation for you as the buyer. And I'm here to tell you, there are ways that you can ethically do things in order to complete a transaction. So now more than ever, with all these changes going on with the government, especially if you are that person that does have to get institutional government subsidized financing, there's going to be changes. That's why more than ever, secondary market financing, that's the financing, the space that I'm in when it has to do with investor financing, anything such as DSCR loans, fix and flip loans, fix to rent loans, list goes on and on and on, private lending, self-directed IRAs. That's a separate type of financing that is different from your institutional or government subsidized financing. And so now more than ever, those are things that you want to have in your financing toolbox. You don't want to have one way to be able to move around and do any type of real estate deal or business financing deal. Now, I wanted to share with you two things to consider if you are going to get SBA financing. Now, I can't stress this enough. SBA financing is not monolithic. What do I mean by that? There is not one way to be able to get SBA financing. what I see now in the marketplace, and you want to be careful. So these are things to, keep a lookout on. Many people will be considered a SBA affiliate. What that means is they really don't have a relationship with a lender. Now, of course, there's a whole gray area of relationship and context. Now, relationship, I don't mean you have the number to the CEO and you're able to call them. That is not what I mean by relationship. Understand the relationship being, are you just an affiliate, meaning that you really don't have an idea. Now, this is what it looks like. I'm going to try my best to give context to this. It usually appears that when a person is an affiliate, they're working with companies. Now, this is not to say it's right or wrong. Just you as a business owner just need to be aware of what type of relationship you want. Because at the end of the day, if you're able to get what you want and they're able to get what they want, I guess is a win-win. But for those who ask, because I've had people who ask me, well, Lorraine, what are some of the things I need to look out for? Find out what type of relationship that they have. Now, some people, I pray, never know on the internet that, they're honest, but an affiliate relationship normally looks like they are representing companies. They don't really know anything about the intricacies of how SBA financing works, but they're able to take an application. That application is given to whether it's a business broker or a business lender, and they take it from there. Like I said, it's nothing wrong with that if that works for you. The When it comes to the intricacies, and these are the things that you want to be careful of, a lot of times with those affiliate relationships, a person may not know the difference between a 504, working capital, a 7A loan. So now what I find that many people don't know when SBA financing would be the best solution for them, because now we live in the world of, we got Chat GPT, we got other AI tools, we got an abundance of information. So now what happens is people are trying to cookie cut what's the best situation. So I've heard, now this is what recently happened to me. Went to a networking event, talked to a business owner, and it went a little further and SBA financing came up. They were totally against the whole idea of SBA financing because the person had a situation where when they met with a person, they wanted them to do this exorbitant application online. And it put a nasty taste in their mouth because they're like, well, what am I going to do this whole application for? And I don't even know if the SBA works for me. And then when I asked them, well, what were you looking for? Was it 504? Was it 7A? Was it the person did not know. So that person's perception of they don't like SBA because they don't like the idea of filling out this whole application, this exorbitant application online, and you don't even know. And that leads me to number two. That's why it is important to understand the industries that a SBA, whether it's an affiliate, a broker, the industry that they work for. Now I'll be honest. Well, Lorraine, well, what are you? I'm an SBA broker, meaning that I work with the lender. I'm not working with someone through someone. Not to say that doesn't work, but I work directly with the lenders. Now, every lender does not specialize in everything. It's only, and I only find this really in certain areas of business on the internet where there's a scarcity mindset where there's only one person who does one thing, and that's not the case because I go to conferences. I'm connected to communities of lenders where you go to a conference and there are probably 25 SBA lenders. All 25 SBA lenders are all not in the same industry. There are some SBA lenders that just specialize in working with franchise franchisors and franchisees. There are some SBA lenders that only deal with people in the hotel industry. There are SBAs that only work in the service-based industries. The list goes on and on and on down in the niche of area of that lending source. There are other SBA lenders that will say, this is not really the area that we like to lend in. You may want to go speak to another SBA lender. But you have to know that, and you're only going to know that in the industry. So that's why I find it odd when I'm talking to individuals who, hate to say it, they, kind of brushed up against some really bad information, and that wasn't the case. What it sounds like is that a lot of times the professional may not have wanted to be honest to say, I really don't know what's the best solution for you. Or they may know that the SBA lender they work with only do working capital loans. That's all they do. They may not even know it's working capital because the lender may have told them, well, your role is to just take an app and we'll take it from there. So all they know is it's just SBA financing. They don't know what type of SBA financing, but then the professional that they want to work with really don't need a working capital loan. They need other type of SBA financing that's available, and they don't need working capital. I say all that to say there are going to be many changes coming down the line in all areas. Like I said, whether it's institutional or government subsidized financing, as well as in the secondary market, the one thing that you as a business owner or a real estate investor want to have, the one thing that you can control is just being very clear on what it is that you want. And I can't stress that enough. Just being very clear. um I'm I don't know about other people, but I'm always leery of a person who's a generalist. Oh, I just do it all, because unfortunately it's hard to just do everything. But I know for me, if I'm going to a doctor and I have heart trouble, I only want to go to a cardio. I know when I go to my doctor, my regular primary doctor, when there are areas of specialty that's outside of the scope of what she does, she says, you may need to go see this doctor. You may need to go to see that doctor. And so I tell professionals that is the same type of approach that you should take in your business. If I'm going to an attorney who specializes in taxation, I don't want that same attorney giving me advice on copyright and trademark law. That's just me personally. But there are some people who's like, hey, I like a jack of all trades and I don't really care for mastery. And so if I can't say anything else as we go throughout 2026 as well as beyond, depending on when you're watching this, specialization really matters. It does matter. I know for me, like I said, I can't speak for every professional. That's why I make it very clear. I don't do residential loans. There are specialists out there that they do that all day, every day. When a person is a first-time home buyer, if I'm just casually having a conversation, I may know some things, but I always make sure that I make it a habit to say, either I'm going to recommend them to someone or say, you want to go to someone that's what they specialize in first-time home buyers, because they're going to know all the grants and and all types of, well, it ain't really so many types, but you got FHA, conventional, I hate to say it, but you ain't got much options. But with that being said, they're going to know all the intricacies with a first-time home buyer. And so I don't try to be an expert in that space. I am an expert in the space of investor financing. And even within that, there are areas that I am only a specialist in that. Like, I'm not trying to say I can help a person buy a 100-unit apartment building. That's not my specialty. I tell people all the time, the lenders I work with, they lend up between 100,000 to 3 million. So that could be a single family up to a multifamily to about 10 units. That's as far as it goes. Like I'm not trying to give advice to individuals who are trying to buy a 25 unit apartment building. I have relationships with people where if a person's looking to buy a 25-unit apartment building, hey, I know this person. Let me recommend them to you. So I'm very clear, and I don't expect everyone to be like me, but um in this time and day of information is everywhere, a lot of people do not know when when the right advice really works to their either detriment or non-detriment. So I say that to say, so like I said, let's continue to see what, the changes are going to happen in the SBA financing arena. Like I said, we have a pending government shutdown going on. And if that does happen, 9 times out of 10, SBA financing will cease. But it doesn't mean that I still cannot help you. But as always, you can go to my website, which will be, if you're watching on YouTube, right underneath this video, or if you are on the podcasting platforms, it will be in the show notes. But as always, it's funds.neverloseadeal.com. There you'll learn about all the different investor financing options that are available to you and how I can help you creatively put your next deal together or expand your portfolio. But until the next time, this is Lorelia, and I look forward to talking